Now that we have computed the variance and standard deviation for both a population and a sample, I'd like to look at what we call the grouped data. Recall whenever we looked at grouped data for the mean, we had to find the midpoint and use it as an estimation. Well, the same thing with the variance and the standard deviation. We must first compute the midpoint. Then, just like our regular data, we're going to take the midpoint minus the mean. We're going to square that value. Here, though, I need to multiply it by its frequency because I don't have just one, so I'm not going to add up a single value squared. I've got to multiply it by its frequency. I add up all the classes, and then, depending on if it's a population or a standard deviation, recall I'm going to divide by n or n minus 1, and this should be a capital N. Take the square root of the variance in order to get the standard deviation. So let's look at some data. The table below presents the number of text messages sent via cell phone by a sample of 50 high school students. Approximate the standard deviation for this data. You will notice that I have these different classes. The class width is 50 because recall that class width is the difference between the two lower limits. So if I take 50 minus 0, that's going to be 50. And you'll notice add 50, add 50, add 50, add 50, add 50. Subtract 1, subtract 1, subtract 1, and this is how we get our classes. This means that 10 people, 10 of our high school students, sent between 0 and 49 text messages. It does not mean that all 10 sent 49, all 10 sent 0, but I do not know how many each of these 10 people sent. It could have been 0 through 10, or it could have been 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, that sort of thing, okay? So I don't know what these exact values are. So I have to approximate the standard deviation as well as I have to approximate the mean. The first thing I need to do is find the midpoint. So I'm going to take 0 plus 50 and divide by 2. Recall that midpoint is the lower class limit plus the next lower class limit divided by 2. And I get 25. I take 50 plus 100, 150 divided by 2, that's going to be 75. And you'll notice the difference here is by 50, same as our class width. So I have 25, add 50. 75, add 50, and I get 125. Add 50, I get 175. Add 50, I get 225. Add another 50, and I get 275. Then I have to find the mean. Going back to previous sections, the mean, since this is a sample, I'm going to use X bar. The mean, I'm going to take the frequency times the midpoint and add those up, then I'll divide. So it's 10 times 25 plus 5 times 75 plus 13 times 125 plus 11 times 175 plus 7 times 225 plus 4 times 275. Then, since this is a sample, actually mean it doesn't matter if it's a sample or a population, I'm going to add these up, which those should add up to 50, and I'll divide by 50. So I'm going to get 250 plus 375 plus 1,625 plus 1,925 plus 1,575 plus 1,100, still divided by 50. So X bar is going to be And whenever I add up this numerator, it's going to be 6,850 divided by 50. So my sample mean is going to be 137. So I'm going to put 137 here. And recall that my mean doesn't change unless my data values change. So I'm just going to mark those down all the way. Now then, I'm going to take the midpoint minus the mean. That means I'm going to take 25 minus 137. That's going to be a negative 112. 75 minus 137. That's going to be a negative 62. 125 minus 137 is a negative 12. 175 minus 135, that's a 38. I get an 88 and I get a 138. So we have taken the difference. Now we need to square this, but I also need to multiply it by its frequency. F represents frequency. So I'm going to multiply that by 10. So negative 112 squared, that means negative 112 times negative 112, that gives me the positive value because I took negative times negative, and 112 times 112 is 12,544. Multiply that by 10 and I get 125,440. I'm going to do the same thing with these next ones. Negative 62 squared times its frequency. So 62 squared is going to be 3,844. I'm going to multiply that by 5 and I get 19,220. I highly recommend that you continue the calculations as I calculate those. Negative 12 squared times 13. So negative 12 squared is 144 times 13 gives me 1,872. 38 squared is going to be 1,444. I'm going to multiply that by 11. So I'm taking 38 squared and then I'm going to multiply that by 11 and I get 15,884. 88 squared times 7. So 88 squared is 7,744. Multiply by 7. That gives me 54,208. 138 squared times 4. So 138 squared is 19,044. Multiplied by 4 is 76,176. I'm going to add all of these values up, and when I add up all of these values, I get 292,800. Recall, I am not finished yet. Now it depends if we're talking about a sample or a population. Recall our question showed a sample. So that means I'm going to find the sample variance first. I'm going to take 292,800, and since this is a sample, I'm going to take my n minus 1. So if I add all these up, hopefully I get 50. I'm going to subtract 1. So I'm going to have 292,800 divided by 49. So my sample variance is going to be 5,975.5. Oh, 0.5, not 0.4. Let me erase that. So that should be 0.5. My sample standard deviation, recall, I'm going to take the square root. 5,975 975.5. Take that square root, and I get 77.3. 77.3 text messages. So I'd like for you to practice these where you're looking at the first getting the mean of the group data again, then finding the variance and the standard deviation. Let me know if you have any questions.